This program made possible by the following.
Legal minds in our area to you, the viewers in the Montgomery County, Miami Valley District. I'm Mike Monta, your producer and host for tonight's program, and we have a very timely topic for you this evening. We're going to talk about elder fraud. And joining me as guests on the show, specialist in our area in this field, Mr. Craig T. Matthews, an attorney, and all the way from Columbus, and we're happy that he found his way over on I-70, and happy to have him here too, Mr. Jonathan D. Blanton, who is with the Consumer Protection Section of the Ohio Attorney General's Office. Before we get to our panel discussion, let me remind you that You and the Law is a monthly presentation produced here at the studios of the Dayton Access Television. DATV is on Channel 5. It's the public access channel of Time Warner. And the program is also cablecast north and south via the auspices of the Miami Valley Cable Council. We also stream live at DATV.org. So you can watch us either place. Executive producer for the program is former domestic relations judge and originator of this program back in the 1980s. We did have TV then, although we didn't stream live, and that was Judge Mike Brigner. This is an audience participation program. You will see at various times on the your set, if we're coming to you live, a number for you to call in, and that is 223-5311. Let me, before we begin our discussion, ask our guests on tonight's programs to introduce themselves and tell you, the viewing audience, a little bit about their backgrounds and familiarity with today's topic. And we'll start with Craig Matthews. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening, Mike. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic. I've been practicing law more than 34 years now, primarily in the area of civil litigation. As I've gotten older, my clients have gotten older, and I'd say starting maybe 20 years ago, I got involved with my first elder fraud case, and it's become an increasingly active, unfortunately, aspect of my practice, to the extent now where it's a lot of what I do. And I'd be happy to talk tonight about that topic.
All right. Thank you. Great to have you here. And we turn now to Mr. Jonathan Blanton, who is an attorney, as I said before, with the Ohio Attorney General's Office in Consumer Protection. Nice to have you with us, Jonathan.
Thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be here. I had the opportunity to join the Attorney General's Office in March of 2011 when Attorney General DeWine established the Economic Crimes Division in the Consumer Protection Section. I am for all intents and purposes, career prosecutor. I was the elected prosecutor in Jackson County for 10 years. Jackson County is a fairly small rural jurisdiction, but we had our share of crime, including, well, unfortunately, theft from our elderly population. We are a fairly small shop now. We support local law enforcement and the county prosecutors by providing investigators and experienced prosecutors who are willing to help in any way that we can.
Okay.
Glad to be here to talk about it.
Great to have you here. Why don't we start with, of course, elder fraud, I think, is a new and burgeoning area for the criminal mind. What with probably more elderly people and our pals, the internet, and although I don't think too many elder people have the cell phones with the getting the online, but it's a possibility. So how is this taking place, and is it taking place more now than ever?
Well, it's taking place more now than ever, but the internet has definitely opened up a whole new world of scam and fraud, from the lottery prize scams to the work-at-home scams, the sweetheart scams, the swindles that take place across borders, across international time zones. And there have always been the travelers. There will always be thieves, but certainly the internet has made it easier. It's made people more accessible, and it's made it a lot simpler to be anonymous, to steal and to not be found.
And before we started the show, and when we were discussing, Craig, you told us that your cases that you're involved with are more where the perpetrators are more close to home, and Jonathan's were more random type, where they find you. What types of things, Craig, have you been involved in that we can say generalize into systematic elder fraud?
I would say the cases that have come to my attention, the first case is probably representative. That was a nephew who visited his older uncle, retired, well into his 80s, hospitalized for some injuries, and they didn't have a particularly close relationship, but they'd get together for maybe a couple holidays a year. And the nephew comes to visit his uncle, and very sorry, brings flowers to hear what happened, and they start talking, and the nephew offers to help in anything he can do, and the subject turns to paying bills. Gee, uncle, what are you going to do about the bills that are coming when you're in here? You're going to be in here for a little while. If you need help with that, I'd be happy to do that. And the uncle is tickled, pleased that he has someone. This is only family in town.
Do you think that, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but do you think that the people who are beginning this type of activity have an awareness of whether the person they are scamming has funds, money, property?
In the cases, almost all the cases I've been involved in, yes, there's an awareness that there's money there, and they're targeting because of that money.
I suppose it could happen when the person is maybe close to indigent, but still has something to offer.
I haven't seen those cases.
You don't see that as much.
No, I don't. Just because of the clients that are coming to me, they're people that had money. This uncle, for instance, his entire life savings ended up being taken from him. There's obvious cases that I'm involved in where they were targeted because of their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jonathan, the AG's office might see more random.
Okay. Now, the cases you do then are, how would you say you get your cases? Because they don't probably start out as police complaints, do they?
Sometimes the client will come to me in two capacities, really. One, the person who has been victimized. They come to me, sometimes they've called the police, and the police have basically put up their hands and it looks like a civil matter. For instance, in the story I'm talking about, the claim was, well, this was my uncle, and he wanted me to help take care of him, and he gifted me this money. So the police did not want to get involved, but the uncle had a different story, and so he came to me. The other inroad would be when it's a relative that is the perpetrator, another family member finds out, and then the family member will contact me and ask if I can investigate or if I can help. There's been an unfair distribution of assets. Someone has been exploited. So I'm either talking to the victim or I'm talking to another family member.
Now, these things are rarely black and white, though, are they? There's all sorts of little wrinkles in them, wouldn't you say? Family history, backstory, things like that.
I would say in almost all the cases, there's two sides to every story. And in all the cases, there has been a defense, some attempt to cloak what was done with legitimacy. I was trying to help. They wanted to give me this money. The only exception really was a case involving a roofing contractor that ended up charging a woman $52,000 to repair her roof. I think that was
Sounds excessive for just about any
correct.
roof.
Yeah, I don't think he had
the
any.
White House or something.
He had no attempt to disguise that as being legitimate, but the others have, and they tend to be very hard-fought cases. The cases typically the perpetrator will hire counsel and intend to prove that they were entitled to obtain all of this person's money, and in the case I was talking about, I had to take the case to a jury. Got a jury verdict.
Are those hard for jurors to?
Not for the jury. When you get it in front of a jury, I'm a big believer in our jury system. People have a good sense. They're very interested in learning about the case that they're listening to, and I find you can almost always trust a juror to do the right thing. And when they hear these stories in the background and put it all together, it usually just doesn't make sense.
They don't like the helpless victim type of thing. Jonathan, you're more on, and we talked before, the cases come to you for investigation. They're generally people who are randomly selected. Why don't you tell our viewing audience some of the things that can happen to the poor unsuspecting, and maybe you should define elderly, so folks that say, I'm not elderly, they might join the category.
Okay. For criminal law
You're
purposes.
not, obviously, or Craig, but...
For criminal law purposes, a sentencing enhancement is anyone over 65 years of age.
Okay. Medicare age.
And Medicare age, right.
Okay.
The random aspect of the crimes that we're seeing it's like fishing. The criminals start casting a line in the water. The work-at-home scam is one sort of common thing we're seeing right now.
Tell us a little bit in detail what that is.
Sure. Let's say we use an example of a person who's retired. They had investments in maybe a 401k. As the stock market's not done as well as everyone had hoped, the investments aren't where they need to be. So a person's sitting at home sometime on the internet, starts looking at opportunities to make some money, make a little extra money from home. Stumble across a website, Google search, stumble across a website, fill out a form, I'd love to work at home. That's usually followed up by a phone call from someone claiming to represent a work-at-home company who will give you the opportunity to sell things on the internet or act as a third-party vendor or host a web mall, and for a low initial payment.
Now, what's a web mall?
A web mall, the way they're described in a lot of this literature is you provide sort of a hosting site where people are directed to. You don't actually sell the items, but you would be the host for other vendors. Let's say Macy's and Penny's and I don't know, let's say Kohl's had the same item. Maybe they're all posted on your site. The customer clicks onto one of them, you get either a percentage or you get just a straight click, 25-50 cents a click. So it requires no real work from you, just training and advertising that the vendor is more than happy to sell you at a significant increased rate.
Sounds like a good way to supplement your income.
It sounds like a great way to supplement your income.
Except
scammers, very easy.
Okay.
Except nobody seems to make the money.
Okay. What happens?
What happens is the customer is sort of drug along for a while, continuing to have to go through courses. You're not making the money. Well, how about some coaching? We have independent, we have private coaches who are willing to talk with you over the phone or over the internet. Maybe you should take some courses We have some advertising packages that would certainly boost your clicks and boost the visits. And have you thought about how you're writing your ads? These are all sort of the common threads that run through. Each one costs a little bit more.
Okay, so these training courses all require some sort of deposit.
Yes.
Okay. Are they a little or a lot? Probably if they wanted $5,000, nobody would do it. So
you would be surprised how often you see
Okay.
$5,000 and $10,000.
All right.
And if you don't have it available, you can get a cash advance on your credit card, can't you? Just go on down to your bank.
Okay. Is there any way these folks can figure out that they've been strung along, do you think? Especially when it's on the internet. I'm assuming that there's never any face-to-face discussions. It's
There's
either-
not a face-to-face discussion.
Okay.
Really, it goes back to the old axiom, something we talked about before we came on air. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, there are people who have made millions of dollars on the internet, but there are also a whole lot of people who have been left with nothing. Any opportunity, you just have to approach it very, very carefully.
So, if our viewers are watching tonight of that age you were talking about, or maybe even younger and just not that familiar with how the internet works, everybody seems pretty friendly on the internet, I guess. What suggestions would you have?
I would just suggest being cautious. When you sign up for one of these services or start looking at one of the services, they will send you a packet of documents, and it will be pages and pages and pages of contract language. And usually buried in there are some pretty bad terms for the customer, for the consumer. Make sure you know what you're getting. Make sure that you really are getting the website you thought you were getting, and not just job coaching, and not just training.
So, are you saying some of these things are legit then?
I'm sure there are some that are legit.
Okay. Work at home or secret, the secret shopper, I get 5 of those a day on our office website. I don't have that much time for shopping, so I haven't looked into it. Are those legitimate or not?
I think it's like anything else. There's a certain percentage of them that are legitimate. If there weren't the one legitimate one for however many false ones there were, it wouldn't be a good market. There are companies that offer good work-at-home opportunities, but there are a lot, and the same with the secret shopper, but there are a lot of people who are just taking advantage of folks in need, and you just have to be careful with it.
Do you think that the actual scammers then tag off of what is perhaps a legitimate industry?
Yes, they absolutely do.
Okay.
You find a model that works, just like the sweepstakes. Everybody wants to win the lottery. You see somebody on TV who's won the lottery, you think maybe this is my chance.
Okay, so when you're sitting up in your office in Columbus, you don't know about this until what happens?
The Attorney General's office receives about a little over 30,000 complaints every year through either the call center, online submission, or through mail-ins. We receive a lot of information through that. They're screened through our process. The ones that look criminal might come to us. We also receive referrals directly from local law enforcement, and we're starting to receive referrals from law enforcement across the nation when they have a victim or a potential defendant in Ohio.
Okay. We're going to take a very short break here. Let's see if I can find my information. Our program does not have commercials. We're commercial free, but we are sponsored by the Dayton Bar Association, which has been in our community since 1883, which they tell me is over 125 years, and I think it's getting closer to 130 years now. And our Bar Association provides a number of community service for the benefit of not only the attorneys but the citizens. The director is Bill Wheeler, and Bill's been with us for a number of years and doing a fine job. We have a lawyer referral service if you don't have an attorney, and you might need one if you're a victim of elder fraud, and if you have no one to refer you, call 222-6102, or the Bar Association's general number is 222-7902. If you wanted to become a notary, they have a notary public service. You take a test and notarize your neighbor's driver's licenses. Well, not the licenses, but their
Transfer certificates.
Yeah,
and
their
title
certificates of transfer and title. It's a good thing I have guests here, so tell me what I don't know. They also have a terrific service which is called Wills for Heroes, and volunteer members of our bar association once a month will create wills for emergency first responders, firefighters, police, and EMTs. If you do not have a will, you probably ought to get one. And they call them simple wills. I don't know how simple they are, but if you call the bar association, they'll tell you where it is. You show up, and within 2 hours, you're wandering out with a will, which would be very good for you and your family at no cost. And we have other community service projects. Our website is www.daybar.org, and it's also got reference information, guide for services, and legal links to the courts, which is good in case you're summoned into court somehow and need to know where it is and where to park and what they do, things like that. So that's probably longer than any commercial you ever saw. But again, the Bar Association is a valuable tool for our community, for our lawyers, and for you, the citizens. So if you need their services, give them a call. You're watching You and the Law right now. We're in our second third of the program, and we're talking about elder fraud. We were going to talk a little bit about elder abuse, which goes over into the physical part of that, but I think the show won't encompass that tonight. We have special guests with us, Mr. Craig T. Matthews, who specializes in this area of law. And Craig, after I quit talking here, if you want to give, you do a blog, I know, and it's a terrific service. Tell everybody where you are and phone number and the blog. And we also have Mr. Jonathan Blanton from the Ohio Attorney General's office with the Consumer Protection Service. And we talked, well, go ahead. I know you do the blog. Is it specifically named or anything like that?
Well, there's a couple ways to get to it. Probably the easiest would be to find my website. It's www.ctmlaw.com. There's a link on that website to my elder fraud blog. I've maintained that for a period of time. And on that blog link at www.ctmlaw.com, you can go to articles that I find helpful. For instance, Jonathan was talking about some of these scams and how some look like legitimate businesses. And there's a helpful article that I uploaded that contains names of different agencies that you can contact, including the AG's office, the FBI, number for the FBI, different federal and state agencies that have been set up that maintain databases that would have the names of some of the known fraudulent people. So that's one thing people can do. The problem is that with the elderly population, a lot of elders are not computer savvy. And they don't have access to those kind of resources. It makes it very difficult. It's a very difficult sector of the population to protect. Oftentimes, my clients or the victims have been widowed, so they're living independently in this economy, this time of modernity. A lot of times kids aren't living in the neighborhood, so the kids might be in Washington or Florida or so. So mom is alone, still able to live independently. Maybe her memory is not as good as it used to be, and judgment also is declining, not to the point that there's anything that's overly obvious to anyone. And these people are at great risk, and the dollars involved are huge. Many of these people have accumulated wealth over their lifetime of hard working and saving, being very frugal. And they're lonely. they have a lot of money, they're isolated, the ingredients for a difficult problem. And oftentimes they're not comfortable with the changing technologies, so they don't know how to use a computer, they don't have all the smartphone capabilities that younger people have. It's difficult just to turn on a television these days. You almost need a guy to get your TVs hooked up and do all the things that have to be done. And that technology creates an even more increasing isolation. There's no easy solution. Many people ask me, what can I do to avoid this? Unfortunately, there's no easy answer. I tell people, if something is new or different and involves any substantial sum of money, run it by someone else. If you have a family member, even if they are out of state, at least call them up and ask them, what do you think of this idea? Or if there's someone, a local, a good neighbor or a good friend, ask someone. All of the frauds that I've been involved in, that did not happen. That's the one thing that's common, is the elder victim acted by themselves in isolation, didn't tell the other children, or didn't tell other members of the family, didn't seek out help from a close friend.
Do you find that often the folks who are the most susceptible to this don't feel that they need help? They don't feel that they're in a dire situation? Do you feel? And I know a lot of your cases are like family oriented, and of course every family has its own history and labyrinth and story. And maybe there's jealousies and things like that, and maybe until 3/4 of the funds are gone, maybe nobody knows.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
So how do you know?
It's very difficult because
Who do you ask?
it's particularly difficult because with the declining, with the aging and the declining mentation, we lose our judgment. It's kind of like an analogy might be drinking. After we've been drinking, we lose our ability to judge. Are we able to drive? Are we so intoxicated that we shouldn't be doing the activity we're doing? Well, you lose that ability. That also happens slowly with this aging process.
It's not overnight, is it?
It's not overnight.
And if you're drinking and elderly, I suppose it's even worse. Right?
And some of my clients have been highly effective. Very intelligent people in their past, advanced degrees. I had a client that had very advanced degrees, obviously a brilliant person during their career. Now, by the time she comes to me, she's well into her 80s. Wasn't really aware that she had lost the ability to make sound judgments.
And didn't want to hear it probably either, did
Of course
they?
not, no.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about some of the things which might be obvious, but people still get caught in them, and those are like, I don't know if it's like Letterman's top 10 list or anything like that, but the big scams, the ones that you'd think, well, nobody would fall for that, and yet they do over and over again. And you get a lot of those, I know you do.
We do, and probably the biggest one in that is lottery and prize scams. It's anytime you receive a notification that you're a winner in a contest that you've never ever entered, it's probably a sign that bad things are coming.
Well, now you say probably. Is there ever a time when you receive a notification of a contest that you haven't signed up for and you're an actual winner? Is it possible?
I suppose it's possible, but I have never ever seen it. I don't want to rule out the possibility, I guess, that there may be some wonderful charitable association out there that just wants to make people millionaires without any action on the beneficiary's part, but it's really highly doubtful.
Okay.
And then when the next step is, you were a winner, but
Okay.
it's time to get scared.
All right. So you're sitting at home. You either get something in the mail, Another one I wanted to ask you about is things that look like they are checks.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go. You got $250, spend it any way you like, and folks don't realize what the trap in that is.
Right. Usually those come with the strings of, here's a $2,500 check to be a secret shopper. Go and evaluate the customer service at your local Walmart, keep $300 for your troubles, and just wire the rest back to us via MoneyGram or Western Union or Green Dot. The twist of that is online sales. Maybe you have posted a car for sale, and the sale price is $2,400. Well, I contact you via email and say, I'd love to have your car. You get a check, and it's for $4,500.
Mm-hmm.
I send you just an apologetic email saying, doggone it, my secretary wrote it for the wrong amount. She wasn't paying attention. There are too many things going on. She wrote it for $4,000. I don't want to have to rewrite that. I tell you what, you just go ahead and cash the check, keep a couple $100 for your trouble, and just send the rest back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Usually via a wire, via one of the money transfer systems. The check looks good. It looks like a real check. It's printed on real check stock. You take it to your bank. A lot of times the bank goes, yeah, it looks like a real check. There's a real account number on it. You get your $4,000. I tell you I'm going to send somebody to get your car that I just bought from you. You wire the rest of the money back to me. 7-10 days later, you get the call from your bank saying, "It's a little problem. That check was no good.
Okay.
We'd like to have our $4,000 back now." And I, the person who sent that check to you, am gone in the wind.
Does it often happen where, let's say the bank holds the money, but you feel as though this is, or the consumer anyway, feels as though this is a good enough deal that they use their own funds, which they may have other than the $4,500,
Right.
which you talked about, sends $3,000 off. The bank does not honor the check, which they've been holding to see if it clears, and you're out whatever you sent them.
Yeah, absolutely, it happens.
Okay. All right. What else?
The other one that is another one that's too good to be true are what we call the sweetheart scams.
Okay.
You meet someone on a website or a dating site. You have all these wonderful things in common. You love to golf, they love to golf. You love to travel, they love to travel. Whatever the little hook is, and maybe we've seen it done on Christian dating sites. We've seen it done on special interest dating sites, whether it's
No, wait a
golf
minute.
or
Christian
sailing.
dating sites?
People will take advantage of any little angle.
Okay.
And you start a conversation, and the scammer builds trust. They build this wonderful life story of how their life has been so bad or so good, and you have all these things in common. But oh no, there's been a tragedy. Maybe they planned a visit to come and see you, but their credit cards were stolen, so they can't get the plane ticket. Or there's an emergency surgery, or they have a sick grandchild or child. And if you'll just send them the money that they need to get through this one little crisis, they will pay you back. And you think that had happened maybe once. We've seen cases where it's escalated into the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of just keeping on the line because, like Craig said, they build trust, they build understanding. These folks are predators. They prey on loneliness and a want to belong.
Does this happen in ways other than the internet? I mean, that seems to be very popular nowadays, but are there other ways that that happens that people should be looking out for?
They absolutely do, and what Craig was talking about just a minute ago. I'll let you probably know more about that
Yeah,
than I do.
the biggest scam that I've seen, involving just in terms of dollars, involves powers of attorney. And there's a saying out there, if Jesse James had known about powers of attorney, he never would have robbed a bank. And that is true. The largest money transfers I've seen have all involved someone getting a power of attorney.
Okay, and that's something for folks to really look out for, because it doesn't seem like, we've talked about families, distant uncles who come up, but it could actually be professionals around your corner. I suppose attorneys could do it. I suppose bank officers, financial advisors could do it, and I don't think any of the things you've talked about were relatives or whoever gets the money could get it without some legal avenue. And that's, I think, what you're talking about.
Correct. The cases that I've been involved in have been, the powers of attorney have been used by a son, by a nephew, by a daughter, and a recent case by a bank manager. So people that are you trust them, and you trust them so much that you're willing to give them a power of attorney. And for people who don't know what a power of attorney is, a power of attorney is a legal document by which you give to another person that you appoint the power to do everything you can do, sign your name basically.
Financially, right.
Correct. They can transfer deeds to real estate, transfer titles to your car. They can sell your CDs, your stocks. They can do just about anything with a power of attorney, and they're used simply to rob. They can be used to rob. And the tricky part is that a power of attorney, I do many powers of attorney because I have an estate planning practice, and for a couple, or whether you're younger or older, I often recommend a power of attorney. As long as you have someone you can truly trust, a power of attorney is a good tool to have in your estate planning arsenal.
It shouldn't be just a blanket ticket to go out and spend money. I mean, generally it's, and I'm positive that you and every other respectable attorney in this area does that. It tells the people it's yours to give when you want to give it, not and it's for your benefit, not for their benefit, unless you write something into that.
Correct. Well, in fact, in my practice is to keep the power of attorney in my office until the client needs it. And I'll tell them, when you need it, you can give me a call, and I'll have the person you appointed, they can come to the office and pick it up, or I'll send it to them. Or if you're unconscious or you can't speak because you're in a hospital under doctor's care, if your doctor provides me evidence that you can't speak. So that's safe. I keep it safe. The problem is, once it's released, then the attorney in fact, the person who's been appointed, the agent, can do as they want with it. So you better make sure, if you give someone a power of attorney, that you have complete and utter, unequivocal trust in that person's integrity. And if there's the slightest doubt, you should never give a person a power of attorney.
Let's say that you had this ultimate trust, and then suddenly you're not so trusting of that person. What advice would you think would be?
Immediately revoke it.
Okay.
And send the notice of the revocation to all institutions, all your institutions, your banker, your stockbroker, your financial planner. Spread it around that you have revoked that power of attorney.
Okay, and I guess if you have an attorney drawing up the power of attorney, that's the person to contact, perhaps. But if it's a general power of attorney, does even the attorney know where to go to revoke that? Or do you think you should tell the people to write up a revocation of the power of attorney? I guess you could just tear it up if you had the original. But
well, if you have the original, that's no problem. The problem is once you've given it to someone, and then if they breach your trust, it's difficult because you have given someone the power to contact your institutions and transact business on them. Really, the only way to undo that is a big problem. The only way is to contact every institution where you have funds and notify them of the revocation, and that you specifically are not authorizing this person to transact any business. But more important than that is to not designate that person in the first place. That's always been the problem.
If the person appears pushy, maybe that shouldn't be a good idea. It should originate in the mind of the person giving the power. It
should, and it should only be given to someone that you have a long relationship of trust with. It's even difficult, and this gets very sensitive. It's difficult even sometimes kids are the ones that abuse that power of attorney. And sometimes the kids are the the perpetrators of massive fraud.
They can't wait for the funeral.
They can't wait for the inheritance.
Or the inheritance.
And they've got, they don't want to share the inheritance with brother and sister. And they take mom or dad in and care for them for a short period of time. And next thing you know, they're acquiring the title to mom's house or acquiring the mom's portfolio. And by the time mom dies, the other kids don't even know this has happened, and then mom dies and all the money is gone.
You talked before about some of the civil suits, and the police will tell the dupees, I guess, this is a civil matter, which I guess is how they originally come to you or referred to you. Is it difficult to recoup funds once they've been released and converted by?
It can be very difficult. I've been able to do that largely because you have to act very quickly. If you can act quickly, you can catch the assets before they're too far gone. In my most recent case involving the bank manager, suit was filed within weeks of discovering that approximately $500,000 had been taken, and I obtained a freeze order that essentially the funds were used to buy a house, and I obtained an order freezing that asset.
You have to file something in court, though.
Correct. Correct.
People can't just call up the bank and say...
They're not going to give it back, no.
Yeah, right.
No.
Okay. Okay, we have about 16 minutes left in our program. We're going to take a very short break to let you know, again, that you're watching You and the Law. And as you can see on the screen there, if we are coming to you live, it says April 2nd, 2012, which is the same day as the NCAA finals, but that doesn't start till 9 o'clock. So don't, if you are watching this, don't change the channels. This could be some very valuable information for you. Our number, nobody's called in yet. Maybe those cell phones are working on the scams. I don't know. What do you think? But anyway, the number is 223-5311. And we have as expert a guest as you would want on this topic tonight, Mr. Craig T. Matthews. Where's your office, Craig?
I'm in Centerville.
In Centerville, Ohio, which is in Montgomery County, but probably serving the Tri-County area if there is such a thing. I know you're right down near Warren and Butler County.
Yeah, we're off of 675, so I get clients from down in Lebanon, north and such.
And Jonathan Blanton, who is a former 10-year prosecutor prosecuting the crooks down in Jackson County, who may need some work on them, but now is with the Consumer Protection section of the Ohio Attorney General's office. Mike DeWine's still in charge of that, I guess.
Yes, he is.
And he's been in charge of a lot of things over the years. So let's ask, what are some of the things, let's assume that you are an elder person or somebody nearing that age. And it isn't just 65. I think 65 folks are still pretty sharp. They know what their assets are. They know what they can do with them. They've just retired from the working class. They've been very active, probably active in the community and their families, but they then get a little older and things change as you do. What should you watch out for? The main things, and what can you do about getting taken advantage of? And we didn't even talk about people going door to door and saying your shrubbery needs work or your roof or something like that, and feel free to talk about that. That wasn't really a question. It was just opening up the topic. What can folks do? What should they be doing?
I think you should always be aware, be cautious, and And don't be afraid to reach out. If it's to a family member, if it's to a friend, if it's to an attorney, a trusted advisor. And don't be too proud. And that's one of the things that with the elder fraud, when we start seeing a lot of money racking up in losses, people get scared. We have a certain amount of pride always as people, and a little bit of fear. I mean, as we grow older, something I've heard from some of our elderly victims over the years, and not just in this job, is I didn't want anybody to think that I couldn't take care of myself.
An element of embarrassment also, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. It's an embarrassment. If they feel that they've been victimized, they become less likely to want to tell anyone because it's just plainly
And
embarrassing.
nobody wants to say that I've lost $250,000.
No.
And I think I might be putting words in your mouth, but sometimes it's the people that find out about it who bring it to the attention of the authorities or attorneys or the courts. Would you say, or
Yeah, I think so. It's
a relative who they didn't trust
that does
before
it. Yes,
now says worse that.
It's a very, very, as I indicated, a very difficult situation because the victims that I've seen have been all of them in their 80s. Really, it's a vulnerable age. Usually, a spouse has died. They're living alone. They're in their 80s, so they're in a period of statistically, some memory loss is going to be occurring at that age. And it's like telling an intoxicated person, you have to be more careful. Well, they can't be more careful because they don't have that ability. What I think is important is for their support circle to be aware of these issues. Their kids who are probably in their 50s, sometimes in their 60s, or their friends. Everyone has to watch out for each other and watch out for the elderly in our circles because they can't watch out for themselves. And if we don't watch out for them, they're going to be victimized.
So, and I think what you're saying also is you don't necessarily have to tell everybody in your family to the penny what you've got. But it's good to share with them the types of assets you might have and discussions from out of the family that may put those in jeopardy.
I would think, you don't have to get into the
On
details.
occasion.
You don't have to get into the details of what you own. But I think if you can get in a situation of trust with someone, a relationship of trust, where you would at least disclose to them if you're about to embark in an unusual expense, whether it's an expense like Jonathan's talking about, this company wants me to invest, $5,000 for a web mall. Well, ask someone about it. Or a sweepstakes victory letter has come. I've won a sweepstakes, but they need me to send $1,328 to Canada in order to do the international transfer tax fee. Well, those are unusual expenses.
So,
ask someone,
and especially if it's going out of the country, I guess would be
or even in the country,
a red flag.
That's a larger red flag. But even in the country, anytime you're asked to put up money that is not the ordinary course, that's a good time to ask someone. So you want to keep people close to you. Have someone that you can trust. Whether it's even if your kid is 1,000 miles away, someone you can at least bounce ideas off of.
What about those blind calls you sometimes get, where folks will somehow try to say they're from the bank or they're from an investment service or something and attempt to just check a few things like get your address, your social security number, amongst other things, your credit cards, the 3 digits on the back of your credit card. What advice do we have when we get those type of phone calls? And I don't think they're as direct as that. It's find out what you're like, find out if you need some service, whether you've been in the military before, things like that, establishing a bond and then working toward getting things that can undo your funds.
Is there actually we see both of those. We see the call claiming to come from your bank asking for your social security number, or your account number, your PIN number, the 3-digit number on the back of your credit card, whatever. Usually that's information your bank's going to have. If you get a call out of the blue claiming to be from a bank or a credit card service asking for your account number, be cautious. The other is a little trickier. This one thing about the internet is, it deprives us of some important senses. As you and I sit across the table from one another, you can judge me by what I say, how I say it, how I look, my eye contact. With the internet, you don't have that. You're basing it just on words. You're basing it on text. And the phone is similar. You don't know where this person really is. You don't know what they look like. You don't know if they're in a boiler room full of 50 other people. Just be aware and be cautious.
Another element, I think those are very good points. And another one, I think anything that is worth saying really is worth putting in writing. So if someone is talking to you on the telephone and saying, I need your social security number or the last 3 digits, the security code on the back of your credit card, I would tell that person, send me a letter to that effect. Don't give anything over the telephone.
If they don't, you should hang up.
Then just hang up. But they're not willing to put that in writing and send it in the mail, or send it by if they say, well, it's too urgent, that the mail takes a long time, well, send it to a fax. I'll give you, there's a local drugstore nearby that can receive a fax. Make them put it in writing.
There was an old Seinfeld skit, maybe you remember it, years ago, where Jerry got a phone call similar to that, and he said, I'm kind of busy right now. Why don't you give me your home phone number or a number to call you back? I'll call you back tonight or something. And then the other people hung up. So I've always thought that might be a good idea, at least to get a phone number to call back to.
It's worth a shot. Sometimes they will give you a number. Usually it'll ring and no one will answer. Oftentimes it's a number that doesn't work at all. But yeah, if they're not willing to give you a number to call them back and a way to get back with them, it's time to hang up, move on.
Do you think that thieves are more sophisticated now? And I know we talked about some of the ones who just show up at your house. And I wouldn't mind if you talked about that a little bit, because folks sometimes are too nice, I think. Somebody shows up at their door, and the advice is, if you don't know the person, don't open the door at all. But maybe they're wearing a uniform, or maybe they've got an official looking van out there or something. What types of things should we be looking out for when those are the face-to-face things that you were just talking about, where somebody looks okay, they might have a fresh haircut or something and seem to have some expertise at fixing your chimney?
Absolutely. It's anytime you're asked to act now and not given an opportunity to think about what you're being sold, think about the price, or the type of work, or the quality of work, you should probably proceed with a little bit of caution there. We did a case down in Greene County recently with a group of tree trimmers, and they would go around neighborhoods where there may have been storm damage, or where there are trees. That's not all that common. You go up and knock on the door. Hey, we'd like to trim your trees. And it would start off with a small investment. That's sort of a common theme. Right. We can take that branch off that's hanging down for $500. They send one of the guys up the tree. Another guy would continue to talk to the homeowner. A piece of wood would fall down, and oh no, there's termites. It's awful. So you're going to have to take that tree out, and there's a special processing fee. And it would always move on from there. So anytime that you're sort of pushed, they wouldn't let these folks have the opportunity to think about it. It wasn't okay, can I call you in 5 days and we'll do this?
Plus, it sounds like a disaster when obviously an elderly or even a not elderly person isn't going to climb their own trees most of the time, and you don't look up to see those dead branches. So they have developed some sort of expertise, I think, there also.
They have in spotting people and in manipulating people. The manipulation of the tree's going to fall and kill your grandchild or your neighbor, what happens if it's your neighbor? They'll sue you for everything you have, and then your kids won't have anything. It's,
These are, as Jonathan's pointing out, these are very clever schemes oftentimes. It's very difficult to
Nobody falls for
discern
the
them.
dumb schemes, I guess, do they?
I guess that's a low-hanging fruit, but a lot of times they're not dumb schemes, they're smart schemes. But in a case like that, go next door to your neighbor. Get someone to look over the transaction. Nothing is so urgent that you don't have time to at least talk to someone that you trust. Make a phone call to your family member or talk to a neighbor or a close friend. Two heads are better than one.
Do you think sometimes that, especially with the elderly, we were talking about folks in their 80s, are maybe a little skitterish to do that if they're the people are overbearing? Of course, closing the door is always the best thing. Nobody wants to be rude, but
and a lot of times the perpetrators of those kind of scams are very personable. Have great personalities and just talk their way into the living room. Fortunately, there's a law in Ohio called the Home Solicitation Sales Act, and that provides that if you're solicited to enter into a contract at your home, you must be given 3 days to rescind that contract, and that must be in the contract. And the days of being forced to sign something at your home and then being bound, you sign a contract to pay $30,000 to put on an addition when you really don't need an addition. I've had a case like that, and then you end up getting sued. Those days are gone.
Well, those only work if you give somebody a credit card or a check?
Signing a contract.
Yeah, signing a
I
contract.
had a case where the elderly person signed a contract to put on an addition, and they then were afraid they're going to get sued for breaching that contract.
So if you give them cash, though, that 3-day thing doesn't make much
then,
difference, does it?
Any substantial amount of cash, don't give it. It's one thing to give someone $25 if they're claim that they're with a local band or high school. It might be a scam, but it's a small amount.
Yeah.
Talking about hundreds of dollars, thousands, definitely not.
You don't want the tail light guarantee.
No.
Some tree trimmers told me that once. That's the guarantee they'd give me. So I got some trees trimmed, though. Okay, we have a little bit more than a minute. Time's gone really fast. Any last thoughts before we send this one to bed here?
If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Keep people close. Bounce ideas off other people before you spend any significant money. Have other people in your lives that you can turn to. And
if you don't, get some.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or at least try, and don't be a curmudgeon all your life.
It's good to get out and meet people.
Yes, that's right. Jonathan?
Craig hit the nail on the head with that. Just be cautious.
Okay. All right. We got about 30 seconds, and that's just about enough time to tell you that we've enjoyed having you, watching You and the Law. We've been talking about elder law with our expert guest, Mr. Craig T. Matthews, Centerville, Ohio, an attorney here in town, Mr. Jonathan Blanton with the Ohio AG Consumer Protection. We'd like to thank all the volunteers behind the scene who have made this program possible. I'm Mike Monta. I've been your producer and host. Thank you for joining us. Tune in to You and the Law the next time. Good night.